going to do some cam testing with the new Kelfords that we've been working on for the last 6-8 months. We're going to start with the Shop 8Y, the red car. Very basic 63mm setup, what we're calling the 850R. This is a turbo kit that we've made 1,000 wheel horsepower with. I'm really pushing them hard, but we're going to turn it down a little bit for ignition timing just because we don't really want the data with the cams to be skewed by ignition timing or knock or anything like that. So we'll turn it down a little bit. What we're going to do today is just get our good baselines. What I like to do with the dyno is throw away the first 2 runs. They always seem like they can make a little more power if the engine's cool and not heat soaked. So we make the fans to where they turn on for about 4.5 minutes. And when you get done with the pull, the fans just keep running for that duration. And then the fans will turn off, and that's our cue that we need to get back on the roller, start the next pull. It's really good this way just because you get really repeatable data, where if you vary the time in between runs, if you have multi-variables that are going on, you'll start seeing data that's not really perfect. So if we're trying to validate a product, we're trying to see if it actually makes more power or makes less power, or we need to make sure we keep this as single variable as possible. So the single variable we're trying to accomplish here is just adding camshafts to a 63mm turbo car and seeing if we're actually picking up spool, if we're making more power, where the torque's coming in. So yeah, that's the methodology that we're going to use today, and then we'll see if these things make more power. So that was our first pull, made like 956. So probably what I expected. Yeah, we'll throw away these first couple of runs, and then we'll start doing the actual testing. We just want to make sure it's consistent. So we won't touch boost control, won't touch fueling, none of that. We're just only going to concentrate on just get good repeatable runs. That way when we do the Kelfords, it's good data. What's important also is that we're just maxing the turbo out up top. So I don't want it to have some left on the table, because what we're going to see with the Kelford is that it's just going to make a lot less boost. It's going to be more efficient VE of the engine. So instead of being like, 360 kPa up top, I expect it to be like 330 kPa. And the compressor efficiency that we gain by having it at a lower pressure ratio is why we'll pick up power. If we were targeting like 80% capacity of the turbocharger, or a low boost level, then when we went up to a high boost level, it would show more power, PSI for PSI, but no one really gives a shit about what the turbo makes at 80% of its max shaft speed, because the aftermarket just runs every turbo as fast as it will physically spin. So it's really not very honest testing if you're running it at 80% capacity, being like, see, it makes more power at 30 PSI with these cams versus that. We want to see if we're making any more power with the turbo all in. So all these tests we're doing, above 6,000 RPM, the turbo's going as fast as it can physically spin. Yeah, so that's pass 2. It made pretty much the exact same power as last time, which not super surprised. Car's super dialed in. I've been driving it like this for the last 2 or 3 months. I probably put 3,000-4,000 miles like this on the street. So that runs pretty good. This turbo's awesome, man. It makes full boost by like 3,800 RPM. Pulls all the way to 7,600. We can't rev these AYs higher than that in the stock TCM, so you just get this fat power band of like 3,500 RPM worth of power over 600 foot-pounds. So these things are a lot of fun on the street. Choose through tires. But yeah, we just have one more pass, and then we'll start to just doing the final testing, which is just trying to get repeatable data. Like, look at the overlay right now. You can see I have the last pass here, so it's just showing a little bit of power gain here, a little gain here, little bit of gain here, but This is pretty much overlaid perfect right now. We probably could stop the testing right now, but I typically like to see at least 3 that are just right over the top of each other, just like this. So let's get this third pass in, see if it makes roughly the same power. Obviously, we're waiting the 4.5 minutes in between passes. Yep, so I made 958.5. So we're within a half a horsepower pass to pass. So it's good data, good baseline data. Really happy with it. Really repeatable 960 wheel horsepower, pass after pass after pass. We'll get these cams switched in. It's usually about a 4 or 5 hour deal. So they'll get on it first thing in the morning. Tomorrow's weather looks very similar to today, so we should be able to get good A/B testing by the end of the day tomorrow. Alright, so we got the camshafts installed this morning and we're gonna start tuning here pretty shortly. Just filling up with the fluids. Yeah, I got the OEM pieces out. One of the cool parts about doing Kelfords too is you get rid of the VVL, which on Cyvex is super nice because it frees up another input. It makes it nice to where you can do some fun stuff with the PWM signal that you're getting rid of when you get rid of this VVL. So not a huge deal on a basic car, but when you get into race car stuff and you're trying to drive a lot of things, you do start to wish that you had a little bit more to run nitrous or to run another pump or whatever it may be. So anyway, we'll report back. We'll see if these things make any power. That was the first run, so yeah, just keep doing cool down, see if we can get it to level out, and we'll get a good reading off that. Seems pretty consistent. Keep running it. So that concludes our testing of these Kelford cams on this 63mm turbo. Now I had some concerns of whether or not this particular setup would be super advantageous with these bigger cams. We've tested these on bigger turbo setups like 71, 73mm stuff. There's some pretty big gains there, not a lot of bottom end loss. So what I have here is the stock cams, pretty much my average run in yellow. So let's just ignore the white line for now. So it's basically coming on boost. You can see the boost profile here. You know, it's at 30 pounds of boost by 4,300 or so, 29 by 4,200. So spool is super nice, and you have this torque curve here. But the stock cams are really geared more towards low-end torque for the teeny little turbo that comes from the factory. You don't really have a significant loss in spool time. Like you can see, it's coming on relatively nice here, but the torque's not really matching it. So you have like this 450, 500 RPM shift in power band. But the trade-off is, even at identical boost levels, like up here up top, now you're seeing really big gains with identical timing, identical fuel map, fueling lambda targets, basically everything optimized for this. Not quite on the ragged edge of timing. I went until we were making about 5 horsepower more on ignition, and then backed it off a degree for both sets of cams. So I think this is pretty honest for us to be able to talk about where we're making about 30 horsepower more up top with identical boost. So this one, actually, the stock cams are building, 0.3 PSI more than the Kelford example. But you can see the boost control is pretty dang good for both turbos. They're hovering pretty much right about the same the entire time. So like right here, it's within 0.1 psi, and we're seeing a 38 horsepower, yeah, 38 horsepower delta. Down here, we're seeing a little bit more boost on the stock cams, 0.1 psi, but we're seeing, yeah, that's a good chunk right there. We're almost seeing 40 horsepower right there. So would I put them on a 63 millimeter turbo? This is my personal car, it's my daily actually. If I was drag racing this thing and I needed 30 or 40 more horsepower especially in a spec class, you bet you, I would run these cams in a heartbeat. One other added benefit is that it helps tremendously with surge. If you have a turbo that's surgy on the onset, it's because the OEM cams are really geared towards low end torque and low end velocity. And a camshaft like this will not only slow the party down, but also increase VE in that lower RPM and get rid of the surge. It's pretty neat that PSI for PSI, this thing's making a bunch more. And one more thing I really want to note too is like this turbo is equipped with a turbo speed sensor. The shaft speeds are identical for both turbos. Above 6,600 RPM, both turbos are running as fast as they physically can spin, verified by shaft speed. So it's not like we're using this graph and saying, we're just going to turn up the boost and lie about the Kelfords. We don't want to do that. We don't want you guys to spend your hard-earned money. There's no upside to lying, like I said in the first video. We want people to get cams and actually make power with them. We're seeing huge gains in the bigger turbos, so like we just want to be transparent with these smaller turbo setups. There are gains to be had on these, just not as big as gains as you're seeing on really, really big turbo setups. So yeah, I'm happy with them. We'll share the cam profiles of how we're running them in Cyvex, either in this video or a separate video, but we want people to be able to get these cams, at least get a baseline or a base map off of where we're running them for cam profiles. That way you're up and running pretty quickly and just have to dial in fueling and a little bit of ignition. One thing to note on these cams is I wish I would have run the stock turbo a little bit harder. I wish I would have targeted another like 10 kPa across the entire board, because I hadn't tried the Kelford cams yet when I started this test. So we started with the stock cams, and I ran the stock cams to where they were pretty much done after 66, or the stock turbo where it was done after 6,600 RPM. I did one run where I ran it 10 kPa higher, and when I ran it the Kelford's 10 kPa higher, it's a pretty big delta. In fact, I'm going to show those real quick, so pause real quick and let me just pull up those graphs. All right, so sorry for that pause. I wanted to pull up some graphs. Like this, I think does a little bit more justice for the camshaft testing, but unfortunately, I only ran one run at the 10 kPa higher, and I don't really love that, because usually my test procedures throw out 2 runs, run 3, average the 3, take the middle run and let that ride as it is. But at the very tail end of the testing we did on the first half of this video, the last run, so after I did the 3 test runs, I just raised it 10 kPa, and I saw that it only made 61, or it made like 2 more horsepower. It made hardly anything more. So you see that's this green line up here. So it made 961, which I was like, it didn't make any more power, so I didn't do 3 more pulls after that, because I figured the turbo's maxed out, it's not going to make any more. But what I really don't like about that is when I did the Kelfords for the same, they made a lot more power, and that's kind of what you're seeing here. You're seeing just a significant, even though the boost is the same still at the 10 kPa more, so like 38, almost 39 pounds of boost, they're the same. It's a ton more power. I still think that you're going to expect like 35 to 40 horsepower. I'm not really sure I'm ready to stand behind these results completely, just because I didn't get the 3 tests and there was more like an 8-9 minute rest between pulls. But it does give me a lot of confidence to be able to recommend these people, even at like a 63, 64 millimeter size turbo, especially if it's seeing the racetrack at all. I think they're fantastic. So anyway, take homes from the test. The cams do work. A big take home from the test is like this 850R is an absolute monster. It's wild that we're getting this much power out of a little 63 millimeter turbo. I guess the real test is that an 8Y with 1,000 wheel horsepower is quite a bit of fun. So we'll get it off the dyno and probably do a follow-up video with us just doing some performance tests, even though it's getting pretty hot here in Las Vegas. But appreciate you tuning in, learning a little bit more about camshafts, learning a little bit more about our methodology. of how we're actually testing product to put our stamp of approval on it. Until next time.